I got it here someplace.
It's the.
Yeah, here it is. Okay, very good. Item 3, audience visitors. Anybody at this time care to make a statement? Is Mary online? No, I don't see her up there. She come make it. Okay. I didn't talk to her.
Ryan was working with him to get him online this morning, so.
Oh,
Yeah, Frank went doing it now.
no, not Frank.
You've been onboarding.
Not for that. I'm not.
And have Cassie do everything.
Yeah.
I haven't even done my own security training.
It's really exciting. Actually, of all the years, this was probably the better one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, at least it isn't all turns like it was the one year.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, but I know all that. Just tell me what I should click.
Okay. We will go to item 4, which is the review minutes of the previous meeting. Has anybody got any corrections or additions? Not hearing any. I need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
A second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I know.
Not hearing any. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item 5 is to review invoices. Sheriff's Office first.
So I made note of some invoices here. Jefferson Fire and Safety, $16,729.62. That was for replacing our aged self-contained breathing apparatuses in the jail. And that was paid for through a ho-chunk request. And I'd like to thank Brandon for helping us obtain quotes and giving us, with his background, a good recommendation for what to purchase. So if they don't work,
Thanks.
We'll have to find out.
yes, we hopefully never have to find out. We do believe the old ones might be 15 to 20 years old.
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure.
Well,
Because we replaced them.
Packs themselves where we fixed them up, but
Right.
the bottles were only 3 years old, so I think Captain David was gonna try and sell those.
But let's get the bottle.
The bottles, get a couple $100 out of them, but the packs
Yeah.
pushing 20 years, which fire department, they say 15. And they were at that limit for now. Here, we're not in, inside of fire, that's why we refurbished them.
Right.
And they were good for here. Yeah, spraying. So.
Morning, sir.
Now you can talk.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I hear you, but I can't talk.
Okay, well, we can hear you too, so we can see you.
You're looking great, Frank. You're looking great.
Yeah, I'm feeling wonderful.
The next invoice, George's Auto Repair, $1,086.28. This was a bill that we received. It was a 2023 invoice from back in January. We didn't receive it, and we missed the cutoff to pay it with 2023 funds. We confirmed that the work was done. That was on our old K9 car, which those are pretty tough when you go to sell them. We did get about a little over $3,000 out of that old car, but we're trying to do better with these vendors to get us our invoices. But once in a while, you'll see one here and there. But we did confirm that work was done. Central Square, the interface between Axon, evidence.com, and our Zerker. So Axon is our body camera vendor, which the ARPA request allowed us to replace all of our tasers, all of our body worn cameras, as well as the dash cameras. There is an interface. There's a lot of videos anymore, and it's a task to keep them organized. So this interface for $3,600, what that does is it tags it tags a reference number from one system into our record system. So it takes the human error out of labeling videos. So we're going to give it a try. We're not locked in, I don't think, more than a year, but we're going to give that a try, see how that works. We did seek some outside references and didn't talk to a lot of agencies using it, but I relied on my team that's worked with both Axon and Zerker, and they were confident that this would work. So, any questions on that? The Comlex services for $1,876. We were able to coordinate with them to have them here while Axon was here installing our dash cameras, and they were able to remove the old equipment at the very same time. So we didn't have squads down. Once the old unit went out, the new unit went in, so our downtime was very minimal. Sleepy Hollow, that's on my squad, $1,013. I had a bad rock chip, town of Sterling, I believe, all gravel. Mostly gravel, not all gravel, but mostly gravel. I think Franklin and Sterling got quite a bit of gravel yet, but it is underneath our deductible. Right, Chief?
Yes.
Yes. Amazon, $47.15 for car brush heads. I just bring that up because we used to buy them at Nelson Agri Center. They're the green brushes that work really good for cleaning cars. I actually went over to the Agri Center because I was looking to buy one personally because they work good for removing snow from vehicles. And they're like,
Look up, see we're muted.
oh, that we were muted?
Yeah.
Oh,
Good now.
are we back? Can you hear us, Frank?
Now I can, yeah. I
Okay.
couldn't for a while there. Amy must have cut me off.
So Aramark, $12,318.42. That would be for our January and February inmate meals. And then I didn't get a chance to check with Amy, but I saw they were on the vendor list twice, top and bottom, but we'll make sure that it's just one voucher going out. Jefferson Fire and Safety, $10,737.62. That's for equipment to outfit our new canine squad. I just talked to the chief this morning, and our Fords are in, so we'll be able to start getting that squad outfitted. The deputy will be starting training, and it'd really be nice to try to have that done sometime in April for when when they're done with school. Had the chief run the numbers on the canine count right now. Donated funds sits at $41,177.50.
Amy had to do that, just to, be clear, because I couldn't, like I mentioned earlier, I can't get mine to work, New Vision.
We heard that New Vision is a very user-friendly software. Okay. And then Sunset Law Enforcement, $5,421.20. That is for our annual ammunition for our training, 9mm 223 rifle ammunition. And that is all I had for highlights on the bills, unless you had questions.
Okay, if that's, okay, we'll move on to emergency management.
I'll just touch on just a couple of them. Hazmat conference registration last week was Wisconsin Association Hazmat Responders Conference. We sent one team member there. That was for $150. She went last year and won a free night or free day. Total conference is $300. So, but she won a free day. She wanted to pay half price this year for her to go both days. So, and then the annual flow test of the SCBA air packs was $1,175. Annually, we have to flow test them for the hazmat team. They come right out to us. They did ours and our satellite team in Dodgeville on the same day. But that our state funding pays for that. Above and beyond that, it's just the normal, the annual membership dues. That's just a once a year thing. But other than that, so kind of the highlights. $2,204.49 is the total that we paid in voucher since we met last.
Questions for Brandon or anything? Okay, thank you, Brandon. We'll go on to item 6, the sheriff's activity report.
February 12, we had our volunteer therapy canine. Remy was here with his handler, Rich. We use our volunteer therapy dogs for forensic interviews when we interview children. It really lightens the mood and seems to work out really well. And these are all volunteer folks. And we appreciate them. I'm using 3 right now. February 14th, Lieutenant Kroom and I attended the Lafarge Schools Giving Back to the Community program. That is co-sponsored with the Lafarge Lions, and we were presented with a $600 donation to the Canine Fund. On February 14th, after to be efficient, when I was in Lafarge, I drove to Champion Valley and met with the Amish family that were struck in the town of Greenwood. Everyone, well, the man, he's still suffering, but the rest of the family seems to be doing really well. He was actually gone to a horse sale to replace the horse that had to be put down that day, but everybody's doing really good. I saw the little kids, they all look like they're healing up, and didn't appear there's going to be anything long term, but the operator of the horse-drawn vehicle, he's still struggling from some of his injuries. And that, of course, is in the court process. But I thought, it was very encouraging that the baby was crawling around on the floor just like babies do, and everybody looked like they were healing up really well. On February 15th, we had a lively county board meeting. I recorded about 9 public comments, and then the sheriff was designated by the county board as the sergeant at arms to maintain order in the county boardroom, of course, in cooperation with the county board chair and vice chair. We've always assumed that role, but now they made it official that we are the sergeant at arms. On February 18th, Burnsville, Minnesota, 3.5 hours from Vernon County, suffered a tragic loss. Killed were Officer Matthew Hinkie Rug, Officer Paul Elmstrand, and paramedic Finn Seth. I'll go ahead and read the short summary of this incident. Police Officer Matthew Rug and Police Officer Paul Elmstrand were shot and killed after responding to a domestic incident in the 12600 block of 33rd Avenue at about 2 a.m. A man who was convicted felon had taken several family members hostage, including 7 children, and barricaded himself inside the home. Officer Rug, Officer Elmstrand, and 2 other officers had been negotiating inside the house with the man who claimed to be unarmed. After 3.5 hours of negotiation, the subject fired on the officers suddenly at 5:26 a.m. 2 officers returned fire, wounding the subject in the leg. While Officer Rug and a Burnsville Police Department sergeant were exiting the home, they were struck a second time. Burnsville firefighter paramedic Adam Finseth was shot while trying to help the wounded officers to an armored vehicle. The man continued to shoot at officers from the upstairs window. Officer Rug, Officer Elmstrand, and paramedic Finseth were transported to Hennepin County Medical Center where they succumbed to their injuries. The sergeant was treated and released. The man committed suicide and was found deceased in the home at about 10:15 a.m. The investigation revealed that the subject fired more than 100 rounds at the officers. The hostages were able to escape safely. Officer Rug had served with the Burnsville Police Department for 4 years. He is survived by his parents and a sister. This is pretty close to home. We're going to talk a little bit about another incident, tactical, and talk about having armored vehicles, but I just felt that we should honor these officers and paramedic. February 19th, Captain David and I began week 2 of leadership in police organization training sponsored by the University of Wisconsin La Crosse Police Department. It's been a really good training, very hard for me to sit still that long, but it has been very, very beneficial, very good training. On February 25, a second arrest was made in the Westby UTV serious crash incident. Both defendants are due back in court March 26th. So far, I've been able to visit with the victim at Elseth personally at the hospital, I believe, at least three times. And she's doing a lot better, but a long, long road to recovery. And with that, I really want to thank my team working very diligently and efficiently with the Westby Police Department to solve this. Very complicated chain of events that day that only by good teamwork was it solved. On February 26th, the Sheriff's Office 911 Dispatch Center received a call from what appeared to be a deactivated cell phone. In a whispering voice, someone said, "Hurry up, shots fired." Using GPS locating equipment through the cell phone companies and our 911 system. We were able to plot it very close to a residence on Huff Valley Road and work to confirm that. We were able to eventually reestablish communication with the residents. We believe there were 2 people inside the home and there were shots fired. Some of the first officers arriving on the scene estimated up to about somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 shots fired, but that was an estimate that they physically shots. My team worked very, very efficiently to establish a perimeter to keep that contained to that location, to keep the community as safe as possible while they worked on that incident. As you know, we have 2 FBI trained hostage negotiators on staff here. The first one is Deputy Jay Bossateg, who is our part-time mounted patrol deputy. And we appreciate Jay so much. After he's retired, he's been able to devote a lot of time here to not only tactical, but also to peer support for officers, which is just very, very beneficial in the times that we live. The second officer is Deputy Willie Raisler. He's also a trained negotiator. They both use their skills very effectively. But with this incident in Ontario, Deputy Bossateg was the negotiator, and we received the call at 8:30, and by 11 o'clock, he had both occupants talked out of the house, and that situation ended without incident. Without good teamwork, communication, and coordination, that could have, I just don't even want to talk about what could have happened there. I did my best to try to keep the community informed. Due to some reasons, I didn't release the names, but a general summary of the incident was put out to the public to keep the public informed. Any questions on that incident? February 27th, I had an informal meeting with the amateur radio group here in Viroqua. Brandon also works with them, just to talk about what they can do in the case of an emergency and how they step up to volunteers such as the dairy breakfast, helping coordinate the transportation, all on a volunteer basis. February 27th, I received a check for $819 from the West Central Metropolitan Enforcement Group. There are 6 county drug task force, and that was for to reimburse our overtime for the 4th quarter of 2023. So as we work on, there's so much money allotted for meth overtime and heroin overtime. So we have to submit those requests according to what drug that we're investigating. But it's always good to see those funds coming back to Vernon County. February 29th, the coordinated community response team met here at the sheriff's office. This is the team that we talk about how domestic abuse is handled, investigated, and prosecuted here in the county, as well as sexual assaults. And we also talked about our help and abuse response team that is working out very well to respond to domestic abuse incidents, to work with the victim. March 1st, Deputy Brown and Deputy Zirk graduated from Honor Guard School held at the State Patrol Academy in Fort McCoy. March 2nd, I joined with the District 3 sheriffs and plunged into the Chippewa River in full uniform, collar brass and a tie. So there's some pictures floating around. But we were able to raise some money for Special Olympics, and it was quite the event. So I plan to, I was really glad to see paramedics standing by. That is the most, it's the biggest temperature change I've ever experienced in my entire life. And it was hard to breathe jumping in that water. So, well worth it for Special Olympics, right? March 5, I attended Badger State Sheriff's Association quarterly training in Madison. Had a good legal update on cases that are affecting law enforcement, court cases that were decided, as well as legislation. There was a push to legalize kratom in the state, and the sheriffs all banded together to push back on that, and we were able to kill that bill. So March 6th, I attended the General Government Committee meeting, and we'll have a separate agenda item on that. March 6th, I returned back to Badger Sheriff's after General Government, and to be as efficient as possible, I delivered some evidence to the State Crime Laboratory to make that return trip worthwhile. That was evidence on the on that Ontario incident. On March 7th, I attended a tour of the state Wisconsin Emergency Management Emergency Operations Center. I'm sure Brandon's been there a million times. I've been there. This was a first for me, but it was good to see the setup there for when there is a statewide or regional emergency. I don't know a whole lot about that, but it was nice to tour that facility. March 8th, worked with IT to install 2 new monitors to monitor county surveillance cameras and dispatch, and you're more than welcome to check that out on your way out here. And then last, I'm going to touch real briefly on an incident we had Saturday. I've not put out a news release on it, but I will. But on Saturday, we received a call from the Amish community that it's involved a vehicle and a person or persons wearing a black ski mask or masks that had reportedly shot at someone from our Amish community. They were able to get a description of the vehicle, a partial license plate, and one of my deputies was able to stop the vehicle, and we determined that these were like a simunition type of gun. They were not classified as a firearm, but we did not know that. And I told the deputy, I said, I just couldn't be more proud of you for finding that vehicle. Otherwise, we would have had quite the scare in the community not knowing what this was. So that's all being handled through the district attorney. 2 arrests were made. 1 was released and given a court date, and the second one will have a bail hearing today. And I will follow up with a news release. That's all I have.
Questions for the sheriff?
Calls. How do you distinguish between somebody doing target practice versus?
This man was walking on County P, and I don't know if the vehicle had stopped, but it was, either shooting from the vehicle, whether it was moving or stopped. I haven't figured that out quite yet because I was gone over the weekend. I haven't had a chance to read the reports, but we believe that we can prove that there was intent to scare the community.
Well, I mean, other times too, like calls into dispatch. Like I have a neighbor who was target practice
Oh, okay.
all the time. So
Okay.
like how, like even calls into the dispatch, how they distinguish that this is not a threat
Okay.
versus.
So Sandy, what we do is we live in rural Wisconsin, and there's a lot of firearms, there's a lot of hunters. What we usually look at right away is safety. Is it a safety concern? We hear of shooting. So as we investigate those, we look, do they have like a proper backstop? We run into that where there's a stray bullet during deer hunting, and that's what we look at is was there a good backstop, and depending on how the case goes. And then late at night, we have an unreasonable noise ordinance in the county, and if it's shooting later at night, we'll take a look at that. And usually just make contact, and they're pretty good about saying, all right, we've had enough for the night. But yeah, those, like you said, Sandy, we don't know. I would say, yeah, some of them are just, hey, I heard gunshots, and then we dispatch officers to the area. And if it's something serious, you usually tend to get more calls on it. So that helps us narrow it down. But in the beginning, you don't know for sure. You got to treat it. You got to treat it like the worst, and then hopefully narrow it down and downscale the response. But it's not. I would say that issue is not problematic here in the county. There's not that many problems with that. But this incident I'm talking about, there was intent there to disturb the community.
Any other questions? Okay, not hearing any. Move on to item 7, Emergency Management Director's Report. Brandon?
Yeah, so the second spring flood outlook came out a few weeks ago, still showing below normal flood risk for the Mississippi and its tributaries. So that's it's a good thing for now. However, we do have us emergency managers across the state, along with all the fire departments, have concern for the increased wildfire danger. We're fearing that it's going to be just as bad or worse than it was last year for wildfires. So we need some rain. Farmers know that, but we need some rain. That half inch a day per week would be nice, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. So Flood Safety Awareness Week was the 25th through March 2nd. We did some messaging with that. The fire chiefs issued a burn ban on March 1st due to the conditions. That was a Friday. They were concerned, how the weekend was going to be. Actually, yeah, that was a Friday. How the weekend was going to be, because it was supposed to be dry, windy, warm. And then they lifted that on March 5th. So I don't think there might have been one or two calls in that time period of people burning, but we didn't get any huge complaints. Well, why are you doing this? I mean, people. But once the DNR took their burn bans off, we talked with our DNR ranger, and they felt that it was good enough. Conditions were good enough last week that they could lift that ban. I held a EV safe class in Westby at Vernon Electric. EV Safe is the company. It's a Wisconsin-based company that teaches safety and just different ins and outs of electric vehicles. And electric did that class. And then we invited all 20 fire departments that are in their service area. There were over 70 people in attendance from 16 fire departments and that Vernon Electric staff. Very well received. They were happy that they could come. I did 2 classes for the active shooter incident management process that we've got. I taught one here in Groveland, and Sparta requested a class, so I went up there with a couple other instructors and taught it up there for Sparta. All of our equipment was moved out of the old highway shop the week of the 19th. We'll talk more about that in another agenda item, but everything did get moved out 1 week ahead of the closing. Bright Horizons, the statewide recovery exercise, we're getting more frequent planning meetings with that. Got another one Wednesday. I'll be listening to virtually. It's at they're in person at the governor's conference, but invites went out last week to participate in the multi-agency resource center on week 2. 2 agencies or departments to participate as a player. So they can get it on their calendars, and I've heard back from some that they'll be there. Did revisions to Vernon Manor's emergency plans. I talked to the board of trustees last week on Friday just to give them an update of what we did. A lot of them were listed as policies, fire plans, active threat plans. They were listed as policies. And they hadn't been updated in a few years, so I updated them and consolidated them. Just a couple more tweaks on that as we'll be done with those, and then I'm going to work on a continuity of operations plan for Vernon Manor and then Vernon Acres as well. Working on a damage assessment training the end of this month. Wisconsin Emergency Management is actually going to come up and help. We've got a online or virtual online you can do with a mobile device, do damage assessment through Survey 123. So when they're doing damage assessments of roads, bridges, things like that, they can actually document all the damage on their phone, take a few pictures, hit submit, and it goes to a system we can see in our EOC, and the state can see it at the same time. So no more hand printing pictures off at Walgreens and handing them to us. We got it all different variations, and it's very time consuming on our end because we have to reformat all that when we have disasters. So hopefully, I don't expect every municipality to buy into it right away. Looking, to get it out there, what we're looking for, and then maybe we can get a few that'll volunteer when we do have something to use this instead of the handwritten documentation. So.
Is there a cost to that?
No, the state pays for Survey 123, the state pays for, and anybody can have the guest access. So there's no fees. And I did it for one municipality last year for the Mississippi flooding. Went did it for her, and she's like, that was awesome. Because I said, your documentation's already at the state. So it was easy for them. Like I mentioned, we had one hazmat technician attend the conference last week. Said she brought back some good information, attended a bunch of classes both days. I haven't had a chance to sit down and meet with her. But it's always a good conference. I someday would like to go to that. There's too many conferences within a month. There's 3 of them that I'd like to go to, and they're all in the same month. So it's really hard to go to all 3 at the same time, in the same month anyway. Our EMPG and EPCR grants, they're grants that fund my position or department. The FY23 grants have been reviewed and approved. So the request for the checks have went to DOA to issue those checks. So I already gave finance a heads up that they're coming because they could have been approved this week. They could be approved in April. Of course, they're cut off in March for 23. So they're already aware of the journal entries. So those will be credited as 23 revenue. And then our hazmat equipment grant also just got approved last week. So we'll have those funds coming back as well for 2023. Tonight is the National Weather Service Storm Spotter Training at Broke Elementary. Every other year we get to host that. They break up their service area of 20 some counties, like 27 counties they cover, National Weather Service Lacrosse. So every other year we get to host that. This year's our year. So hosting at the elementary school, it's a couple hours, and they go through their process of how they read the radar and issue forecasts and things like that. A bunch of air trailer runs this past month. We had 2 structure fires that the air trailer went to, and 5 other runs to just departments that needed their cascade system fill up in their station. So it was a busy week and a half for the air trailer when that happened. And then Thursday, Friday this week, I'll be in Lake Geneva at the Governor's Conference on Homeland Security and Emergency Management.
Questions for Brandon? Sounds like a nice conference coming up there.
Yep, it's always a good conference. Just a Thursday, Friday in Lake Geneva it's a long ways away. But it's always a good conference to go to.
Okay, well, thank you, Brandon. Move on to item 8 here, support on the mobile command post funding request.
Yep, so this one was added on Friday we got it added. So the mobile command post is one of my capital improvement items I'm looking at. It's 20 years old this year. Congressman Derek Van Orden and Tammy Baldwin both have congressionally directed spending funding they issue or put out there every year you can request for. But it's for 2025. So you put them in this year and then they can review all their submissions that go to them. Then that goes to Washington, D.C. to see if they'll be, awarded. So this will be next year. We talked about it. I met with Amy Oliver to replace this. And I've talked to a couple companies, just very, looking at their website, they've got what they've done before. So I was just looking at what would fit our needs and just called them and said, hey, what would this one cost? Without going out to bid an RFP to get an actual design, to get a narrowed down number. They gave me a ballpark of $650,000 to $725,000, depending on what we put in it. We went very basic. It could be $575,000, but that was without a bathroom and some other things that we kind of need. So we thought, because it's going to require match, there's different different committees, I guess, or appropriations you can select that it would fit in. A lot of them are 20% match. But because it does require match, we felt it should come here for support. So we can apply for those. They're due at the end of this month. And then we can put together just to have support. We're not spending anything this year, but we want to see if we can award it first. To help upgrade our command post. So
The sale of the old one be the match? Or do you?
Possibly. From what I find in files, that one, when it was purchased in 2004, was $100,000. So I don't know if we get $100,000 for it, but we could use that for some, I would think. As long, we'd probably have to sell that after, but it would offset, in the end, yes. But we wouldn't keep it, we would sell it.
So is this all grant money for that?
The appropriations would be, yes, it's through the federal spending. So Amy, did you have anything that I may have missed?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I don't think anything you may have missed, except for just to mention that as of right now, we have that whole chunk funding set aside for grant match support. So that was a program established to help overcome those match barriers for departments, and departments can apply for up to $100,000. So depending on what the balance is in that account, which right now we would have that balance to support a request for this match. So that could be a big chunk of match toward the requirement as well.
Yeah, I guess today we're just looking for support to, apply for these. We're working through what they need for information. Both of them. One of them's a Word document that we got to type in and email it to them. The other one, it's an online system. We go in and do everything in the online system. So, but it'll be pretty cut and paste between the two. We're going to apply to two, and sometimes you might get a little from both. One might pick one up and one might not. So
Well, you don't want a motion here.
I'm looking, yeah, I think just that your support, to support, going for these, because there's a decent amount of match, support to apply for the grants, I guess. And we'll type up a resolution that would come to the full.
So, just so I understand this a little bit, this match that we put up in front there, that comes back to us and this gets paid for through the thing, or?
The match would be 20% of the overall cost, would be our responsibility.
That'd be our responsibility.
Yes, and that's where that scheme you mentioned, that whole chunk money may come into, that's set aside, or partial from proceeds from the sale of the old one.
Because you're looking at 150,000
For match.
for match.
Could be, depending on overall cost, yes.
That's usually where it goes.
Yep.
Does the state ever kick in or something like that? Or is that not?
I haven't seen anything. Most of them are kind of on their own, counties are on their own, so.
If you get that kind of money, it makes sense to come up with a match.
Right.
If you need a motion, I'll make a motion to support Brandon's request to apply for the local command post funding.
Okay, Charlie makes the motion
A second.
and Sandy seconds. Any discussion here? Not seeing any. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Got that support there, Brandon. Okay. Nothing further here. We'll go to item 9, which is the Crime Prevention Funding Board.
I'm just not getting a lot of interest in this. We've got a new district attorney. I'll certainly see what her take is, but other players have been adamant about not supporting the funding board. For the money we would get, it just might be, a lot of overhead and having to have a committee to decide those small amount of funds. So it would be my recommendation, we take no action and just take this off the agenda and something changes down the road and bring it up again.
Okay. We'll go on to item 10. Discussion on storage facility space.
All right. So after last month, you gave us some direction to go over some things. So I created the spreadsheet you have. So I'll start with the county barn hayloft. Frank, you got this in the mail with your packet, correct? Did you get an agenda in the mail yet? Okay.
Yep.
So the county barn, the hayloft, talking with, we had a brief discussion with the city's building inspector. He said just an assessment would be roughly $5,000. It would require a fire code occupancy change, potential for a sprinkler system, a large ramp, get up there, state approved plans, basically probably a couple $100,000 just to even get it to where even usable. So we kind of ruled that out. We did talk with another construction contractor and they said that's not a good idea at all. Yes, it held hay, but that's more of an even weight distribution versus vehicles parked throughout there, and we don't know what the sidewalls are like. City of Ropa, the new fire station, that overall design is about 98% complete. The bid, it did go out for bid officially last week. I talked with the fire chief. They have all of their spaces allocated within all the bays, so there is no room for the command post. That was asked for, and then we're still looking for a place for the rest of the equipment. The old Ford, Sleepy Hollow Ford building, as requested, Bill, Cassie, and myself did go meet with Levon and kind of did a tour of that building. There are some things that and we haven't done any official deep dive assessment on, maintenance, what may be needed, structurally it's good, but what maintenance may need to be done, we don't know that. We didn't do a deep dive, but there's no ADA access to the second floor, so there's office space and storage up there. We can use it for storage, but we can't use any offices. Not saying that offices would be moved there, but that's kind of dead space we'll lose for a while, potentially. It does have enough space. We figured roughly 12,000 square feet of storage space in the back. About 4,000 square feet is office, so overall it's about 16,000 square foot. And in the notes I put here, I was trying to play both sides of the fence. So it's going to come off the county and city tax roll, but again, it is big enough. There is a current business leasing that, but he was willing to work with us and them if that's where the decision went. There is no generator emergency power there, but I don't know the cost. Could we trench a line from the sheriff's office generator because it's urgent to that? Or would it be cheaper to just put one there? I don't know. That's cost we didn't look at. It would be an immediate solution if that's where we want to go. Estimated fair market value just off the county's GIS website for the building, the blacktop parking lot, and then the gravel lot behind where he parks vehicles that are wrecked vehicles is about $840,000 for both areas. And it was built, I think he said 1998, 95 or 98 it was built. So going on to page 2 then, on the backside, overall space needs, I need about 6,000 square feet. And then the surveyor, about 300 to 400 square feet for his truck that he uses. That is a highway truck. It is currently, I think, parked in the new highway shop. But that was in the old highway shop. So I was looking at stuff that was in the old highway shop. It's not highway stuff. The ADRC vans and bus, about 1,200 square feet. Sheriff's office with the MRAP and Humvee is about 2,000 square feet. So total, if you look at overall county departments that need space, roughly about 9,000 square feet. I did check with Phil and that is all we can think of. That things that absolutely have to be inside, not just for convenience. If we looked for the future, 11 to 12,000 square feet. We did build something, we could just build it for today, knowing, and build that end wall so you could add on in the future if future needs required that. And then building a new building, the last one, we could, garage doors could be placed where we, to better suit needs. Obviously, state approved plans would be needed. We already own land. And I just put in there that the ARPA request that came last fall for that $200,000, that was for design, construction management, all of that. So just design would be a little cheaper. And then again, I just put in there that all equipment is in the same place. So I think that covered all of the requests that you guys had last month.
What's the estimated cost of a new building?
Going off of what the highway did for the DeSoto salt shed, or just the DeSoto shed that they built, it's 4 bays. It's heated. One of those was about $300,000. We would have to double that to have enough space because it's not long enough. It's deep enough. It's just not long enough. So I would say it's probably $600,000 to $700,000 roughly. And that I don't know, I didn't get a chance to ask square footage. Phil, do you know what the square footage of that DeSoto shed is?
DeSoto is 4,000 square feet.
Double that, you'd be pretty close to fitting everything that we need in there. And we'd make
But we
the,
can't be pretty close.
right, and that's, that's if we had everything that was in the old highway shop. And, you know, currently the MRAP stuff is here in the Sally Board, so there's some things that we could.
And you're gonna need some thicker cement for that.
Correct. So there's, like I said, we didn't do a deep dive in the cost for a new building because we'd have to go out for bid. So we just went off what the DeSoto shed was. And the ADRC, they do have a spot for 2 of the vans in a garage. The bus just does not have a spot that I'm aware of, and I could be wrong.
And you're talking for your overall space needs, not all of that needs to be in heated storage, correct?
Correct. Like the map that I handed out, 2 of my trailers are parked outside. Everything else is in heat. Gotta be in heat. Everything that needs to be in heat is in heat of mine. There are 2 trailers parked outside.
I'm talking for the new building.
The new building.
How much of that needs to be in heated storage?
Probably 70% of it, 75% of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know building code, if you built one building and then part of it was cold storage and heat, if what firewall you gotta put in there, with building code, I'm not sure.
Right. But if it doesn't need it,
Right.
you're gonna save money in the long run over time.
Right. So that's where we went with, we did meet, and then, like I said, we went with the bond to just look at that building again. We're in, the map shows, I just did that, and I did this map for more of our hazmat people, so they kind of know where stuff is at, because it's spread out now. If we get a call, they kind of know where they have to go to find stuff. And part of that, with shop salt sheds, and in the winter time, I'm not sure if Phil's gonna need that space back, or if we can hang on to it. We absolutely have to. So that's kind of where we sit.
Is that ARPA money still available for a building design, or is that not anymore?
Not sure. ARPA money for design? For any what?
There may be, we're looking at that as a possible option for something else.
Oh, yeah,
Well, but it's hard to make a decision if we don't know what cost you're talking.
for design.
Well, for the building and the design.
Yep.
I think we had, I think it was last year, it was
ARPA.
I think for 200,000.
Yep, and that was for overall design, construction management, everything.
Yeah.
Do we need construction management?
For something like that, Phil, do you feel you need construction management for something like you did for highway?
If we do the type of building that we did for the highways, you figure construction management in with the build with the contractor. You write a contract for that.
Oh, what was the design cost for one of those?
I got John looking it up right now to see what it costs for design. And I say then when they got the bid for the build, we did a side contract that they handled construction management of the project. For a building like this, you're going to need, sewer and water hookups and your heating contractors and that sort of thing. A lot of that we can do ourselves as long as we have the state approved plans as far as HVAC and that sort of thing. But it wasn't that horrible much, it's based on a percentage of the cost of the actual build.
And I know those, when we submitted that grant last year, for the Department of Defense, that percentage was like 3% or something like that of the overall cost. If I remember correctly, and that was just them kind of rough giving us some numbers, so.
Okay.
Spot we had picked out for that grant was between the Sally Port and Erlinson, kind of up on that knob, on that access road between the two. Farmland's kind of at a weird angle there, so we just kind of put it right there as one thought. There was a couple other options, but that one was, because there's utilities right there then too. So that cost would be a lot lower because you wouldn't have to go a long ways for utilities.
Me, it seems like.
I don't have a thing so I can raise my hand, so I'm just gonna butt in. But for our cold storage building, which was $150,000, that was the contract. It was a $25,000 for the design of that with state approved plans.
Okay, the sheriff has a question here too.
So a question for Brandon and pardon me or Phil for not looking this up myself, but do you know what the square footage of the Sleepy Hollow building is? I don't see it on here.
It's about 12,000 square feet from the back for the storage area, and then about 4,000 square feet of office, rough. And that was based on building size. We've kind of figured it, and talking with LeVon, that's what we were figuring. We're pretty consistent.
Thanks for answering that. I didn't, I could have got my tape measure out too. Or we use Google Earth for that. So I haven't had a chance, excuse me. I haven't had a chance to meet with Brandon on this yet because it just came up. But while touring the Wisconsin Emergency Management Emergency Operations Center with some other sheriffs and the Emergency Police Services Director and so on, Wisconsin Emergency Management and the National Guard are very closely connected at the state level. And one of the sheriffs had asked about storing a hazmat vehicle. And one of the folks at WEM said, well, why don't you look into a memorandum of understanding with your National Guard Armory? And I think it would be worth investigating because of the, first of all, the close connection between WEM and National Guard. This is a National Guard Armory. It's a beautiful heated building. It's got big tall doors. The former, and I'm not sure what the status is of the 107th maintenance company.
It's all utilities are shut off. Water, heat has been shut off, and they've been gutting it. They're going to be tearing it down either this year or next year to build a brand new one.
Oh,
So I can't even.
but could you still look at an agreement with them?
I don't know. I don't even know what the new one's going to look like, but to get in the new one, they've shut everything off. Everything is off in there, including power. There's a local person who works for National Guard facilities, and he said I don't know when they're going to tear it down, but they're getting close now. But I've had that in my mind.
So are they building on the same spot again then?
Right behind it, there's the same lot, but I think they're going to move it back a little bit from what I've seen. That may have changed, but yeah, same spot, same property. But it's potential, and I don't know what their future thought process is on use of that once they build a new one. If they're going to do more trainings here and be there more full time, like we used to have, because before there was one person there. I don't know what they have thoughts on for use of that when they do rebuild, but right now I don't think it's an option, because I was going to ask for a short-term solution there, and then I was finding out that they shut everything off and working on tearing it down, so. But it's something we can look at,
There's a lot of empty space in there.
right?
But that's, you can eat on the floors. They, on drill weekends, they shine the floors up and. We just had an election there a couple of years ago.
Right.
Wouldn't hurt to at least check.
Well, we're checking to see if the design is final. I mean, because if they'd be willing to do a partnership, they might adjust it for doors or something. You don't make deal without asking.
No.
Other than delays thing.
And if I hear anything for contact information, I'll get it to Miranda to do that.
I don't know just how this fits in the realm of everything money wise, but I have to figure out if you can get, what you can get for design and what this building's gonna cost to even approach it, don't you? And I'm not even sure what state of financial shape we're in right at the moment.
Well, I am having our, when I met with our financial advisors last week, they are gonna do some modeling for me as far as the debt schedule. So if we did, because this got brought up, they asked if we have any like planned projects coming up, and I said, we've been having this discussion. So they can do some modeling of some options as far as that goes.
We're gonna need that.
Yeah, and I did give them a rough number.
Okay.
Yeah.
What direction we should be going?
I guess to be fair, we almost have to get an answer about the emergency, about the new building.
I can make a phone call, I can make a phone call today and probably have an answer.
Okay,
But then if that's a no, prices are where they're at, to me, it would make more sense to build new. To meet our needs, but
and when will we know this modeling you've been talking about? Yes, is that gonna come out and coming forward, or where will that?
Yeah, so I would hope to have something by finance committee this month, and then for county board. Yes, as far as some options for, if we did borrow for this
what would
project.
it cost us roughly to get an assessment of the Ford garage building? Any idea? I mean, because we can't walk into that blind either.
No, that's what, before we want to pull it, say yes for that, I'd want to do, because I asked Levon what, if he saw any long-term maintenance needs coming up. He didn't have any directly in his mind, but he did say that they just replaced, I think, the furnace in the back room where the main storage is at. Other than that, I couldn't think of anything. I can see some things outside, but it's going to cost some, but it's not going to cost, a ton. But to do a deep dive, I don't know what an assessment would be.
What we need for our needs, I mean, that's gonna inside this.
Right.
Well, and Brandon and I talked too with the layouts, even if you could make even if you looked at the Ford garage building, like for a 5-year project, and then at that point decide if you got to build or not. If it absolutely doesn't work, but you could work into the budgets to add a door. So like the big fan post could just back in. And then you still have those other 2 doors for emergency response stuff, the hazmat, whatever you would need. But without knowing what work needs to be done there, it's the same.
You're kind of talking makeshift here.
Well, no, I mean, right now, they could function as is right now. But long term, if they need to just add a door, that would be not a huge expense. Because one of those things, once you use it, because a lot of it is winter storage, which doesn't need to be moved around. And there's options to that too, but which is, that's what without building costs, it's hard to say, or what need for that building to be, it's hard to say.
Another thing that Phil and I talked, Phil, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm here.
What did you estimate that parking lot was worth over next door at Sleepy Hollow?
Well, there's a lot of blacktop there. You're talking a couple $100,000 of blacktop to make a lot like that. That's approximate, of course.
Okay. I look at, future. If, I was just looking at, not that this is ever going to happen, but, if a courthouse were ever to be built here, you're starting to run out of room unless you have, property next to you. I was just looking, Rusk County, they're building a courthouse or a new jail onto the courthouse, and they're doing it in 2 buildings, but they're connecting it with a skywalk over a street. So I'm just saying, as we tighten up our footprint here, we're just running out of room for the future, thinking 35, 40 years down the road.
Well, I don't know if we make a decision today, but Brandon, we maybe want to hear about this financial thing Cassie's going to get together here this month yet. And next month, talk about this again on the agenda. You've got to talk to the National Guard a little bit, see what they're doing over there, if that's a yes or a no.
They all are.
I don't know if there's anything else.
My only concern is that we don't postpone to the point where we end up in panic mode and then have to rush to make a decision on something.
That's true.
Because it's not long till the fall, and then we're gonna.
Yeah.
Well, it isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
Every month, you take.
Yeah, that's.
I agree. So, but I think we should hear what Cassie comes up with this month. And that's only in a week here. We get a county board here next week. So.
Nothing says that we can't have you can schedule
Have
a
another
whenever
meeting.
Yeah. We can just do it early.
We might just have a special meeting. We could have that.
Yeah.
So, but let's get that info, and then you probably pick up that National Guard info, and we can talk amongst ourselves and see what we need here. If we need an extra meeting or something to do some strategic planning, we could. Okay. Okay. Go on to the next item, which is to review policy 503 overtime and compensatory time and make recommendations for possible changes.
I'll share my screen. Okay, so there you're looking at Vernon County policy number 503, overtime and compensatory time. Not sure when that original policy was created, but it was amended in September of 2022 by the General Government Committee. And that was done at the recommendation, according to the minutes, of the then county administrator, the HR director, the former HR director, had made those recommendations. And what that means is, I'm going to give you an example. So let's say we have a Monday through Friday worker. And for some reason, they took off Monday or Tuesday on an approved absence, vacation, PTO, whatever you want to call it. And let's say that they're a Monday through Friday worker, and we know in law enforcement your time off is sacred. And I call that person on a Saturday morning and say, we've had an emergency and we need you in here right away. You handle whatever, cover a shift. We have minimum staffing here in the jail as mandated by the state. Dispatchers, I have to have somebody answering the 911 when they call. And what this policy change did is it said, if you took PTO on Monday, you work Saturday, you do not get overtime for that same number of hours. So let's just call it 8 hours. Let's say you worked 8 hours on Saturday. This policy is saying you do not get overtime for Saturday. You get your PTO back, or I suppose you could be paid maybe straight time, but you do not get overtime for working that Saturday shift. As I said, these days off in law enforcement are very sacred, and to expect someone to come in, drop what they're doing, to work what I call overtime, and overtime, I believe it will hinder our operations here at the sheriff's office. I tried to make my argument to the General Government Committee meeting, and they did propose one. So what you're seeing in red is what was changed in September of 2022. And what you're seeing here in green is, let me make this a little bit bigger here. Okay. So I'll just read 2.2. Employees in the correctional officer positions may receive pay for the overtime hours. This will be paid at time and 1/2 the hourly rate of pay for any hours worked in excess of their normally scheduled hours per, and it used to say pay period, and General Government went ahead and changed that to per shift. That does help cover when you have to stay after your normal shift during the week, but it doesn't account for that problem with Saturday when you had taken PTO in your previous pay, in that same pay period. And it also, and it just says correctional officers. Well, my correctional officers are extremely important, as well as my 911 dispatchers. And I just feel that we had to order in a correctional officer to fill a shift. It wasn't, there was talk earlier that, well, maybe, you should get after someone that called in. Well, it wasn't because anybody had called in. It was just a shift we had to cover. Because these PTO shifts, when people take PTO, we have to schedule their absence as well. So if we keep giving them their PTO day back, the can just gets kicked down the road where we've got to reschedule that time off. And I'd love nothing more than this committee to make a recommendation, whether it goes back to general government, or what I could do is just ask for, these policies are all going to the county board floor on the 21st. I could just ask for a friendly amendment right there on the board floor and get it approved. But I'd rather go through the proper channels and go through committees. And I am looking for your support on this. And I'd be happy to, the first week this came to a head, I had 4 timesheets we had to change, and Amy has redacted the names out, so I'd be happy to forward you those emails about how we had to change their timesheets. So let me give you another example is so then when I call that dispatcher, that jailer on Saturday, and I say, we've had an emergency, you need to come in, and we know that this is a little extreme, but it could happen. I know that it's your granddaughter's birthday party today, and we'll do our best to get you out of here on time. And by the way, you'll get straight time today. So how do I solve that? So I'd like to see this policy amended that does away with those changes for my entire non-sworn staff. We believe that the contracted employees, which are a little bit less than half of the agency, that's spelled out in the collective bargaining agreement. But as far as dispatchers and correctional staff, it is not.
My question, Roy, is how now take like last year, how many times did you get in this corner?
Well, we had been doing this, I've been here for 31 years and we've always done it this way. And these changes, for whatever reason, didn't start, it came up about a month and a half ago. So, and boy, the backlash I've gotten from employees, we had the jailer we ordered in, she's like, what do you mean I don't get overtime? Well, because you took PTO earlier in the pay period, we can't pay you overtime when we order you in. So for whatever reason, it was not implemented until about a month and a half ago.
So what do you anticipate, how many times in a year could that possibly happen?
Well, that particular pay period, it came up 4 times with 4 different employees. We do allow PTO to be taken one day at a time because sometimes it's easier to schedule it that way. But it's going to come up. It will come up. I don't know if it'll be every pay period, but some people like to take 2 weeks off all at once. We got a sergeant, he works his tail off all year, but goes deer hunting all of November. So they've worked to earn this time, and I want to be respectful of their time off. I will tell you on a much more positive note that we have several deputies out on the road that are still dual certified, meaning they're certified for patrol and the jail. And we've, in fact, one of our dispatchers, we were able to get his dual certification. The Law Enforcement Standards Board, they review any waivers that we request, and they've been very generous. What we're trying to do is avoid ordering someone in. So if we have a deputy that is dual certified that could come in and work the jail, we'll check with jail staff first. And if none of them want the shift, then we'll reach out, rather than ordering someone in on their day off, then we'll reach out to the other dual certified staff that we have. But this is still going to come up throughout the year. And as far as how many times, that one pay period was 4 employees that it affected.
So is there a price tag on how much that would have cost? Over and above, or do what the way they wanted?
Oh, one of the ones we looked at might have been, I think, just some preliminary numbers. It was $157 for the shift. But then you still have to schedule that PTO day that you gave them back. Then you still are dealing with scheduling that at a later time.
Let's say you give them the PTO day and you work them on Saturday, whatever hours it is, how much is that extra time and a half? Or that's, yeah.
It was $157 for that, yes, is what we came up with. But you got different pay scales.
See, at paying them $157, their PTO is used up too, right?
No, they just get their PTO day back, so then we have to schedule that PTO down the road.
Oh,
Yeah, and then you're running.
But then you're paying the 157.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they get their PTO day
oh,
back.
yeah, that's what I wanted. It's got
And you know what? We might have employees that just might want to do that voluntarily. And
Well, that's what I was gonna ask,
Yeah.
because there's some that would rather have the time off,
yeah,
but then you gotta write the policy to incorporate both,
both, yes.
which is a whole nother one.
But it sounds like some of that's already being done in the county. I can't tell you exactly which departments, but we are a 24/7 operation. And I find it hard to believe that we don't run into this at Vernon Manor where they're scrambling to fill a weekend nursing shift. And if this were to apply, I find that hard to believe that wouldn't apply there as well. Phil, you do some 24/7 coverage, but I would say us and Vernon Manor are the only true 24/7 operations in the county, as far as daily.
But you haven't checked with Vernon Manor to see how they are adapting to this policy?
I have not, no, I have not.
We have not had issues at Vernon Manor with the implementation of this overtime policy.
So I guess I'm kind of still a little bit confused, right? So that gentleman takes PTO on Monday, works 4 days and comes in on Saturday, works time and a half. Okay, so he's paid 32 hours of regular pay and 8 hours of time and a half. Is that how it works?
No.
No. But he's
So they paid for Monday.
Let's say, but, okay, go ahead.
Yes, so I'm gonna give you a little background. So somebody said there's federal regulations, and what it says is the county is correct. They do not have to pay time and a half in that case because it's all based on hours worked. So the feds say that PTO is not hours worked. However, there's nothing that says you can't do that. And when I was at Badger Sheriff's, I got laughed at by most of the sheriffs when they said, "That's ridiculous, Roy. How do you get people to come in on weekends?" And I said, "Well, I don't know because this is new for us." So yes, to answer your question, well, not to interrupt you, but they would get, it would be a straight time week is what that would be. There'd be nothing extra for working on Saturday. They would just get their PTO back or a portion thereof. So if they worked, let's say they worked 4 hours on Saturday, they get 4 hours of PTO back and they'd use 4 hours.
Yep. Okay.
But they've still been inconvenienced and are trying to help the department.
That's
You
right.
are trying to make.
That's my argument.
You are
Sandy.
trying to make it consistent with all the other people in the sheriff's department, which currently it is not.
And now I'm talking about prearranged, approved time off, not this last minute stuff.
Right.
I don't have any problem with saying, no, we're not doing that. But when it's so what you have to balance is, what are you better off doing? Denying someone their vacation that they've earned and put in for, or ordering someone in? Now, I've received, over the years, I've received phone calls and they said, "How bad do you need off on X, Y, or Z?" And sometimes I'll say, "No, I was just using up some vacation," and I would cancel my vacation. But other times it's, "No, we have reservations at Jellystone." So what's going to create more damage here? Ordering someone in on their day off, or denying leave time that they've earned?
It
That's the
seems like
balancing
it's a
act.
small investment to improve morale overall, correct?
I couldn't agree more. And I feel that we need to spend the people's money very wisely. But on the other hand, it makes it tough when we're making them calls. And something, an example I use at general government is we often use correctional staff to help with some of these lengthy mental transports that sometimes, we had a call recently that it was about a 30-hour call by the time everyone got to their destination. So I was using correctional officers to relieve deputies at the hospital to maintain a guard on these people. So it's not just filling shifts. There's other things that come up that we utilize our correctional staff for.
Charlie, give your input.
I agree with Roy. I just think the wording of the policy is going to have to be very specific because it needs to be a planned and approved day off. Because otherwise, you're going to have people that get a hint that there might be something coming up, and that's where I'm going with it. If it's something that's totally unexpected, then they shouldn't get time and a half. If they know they're short and you know that there's going to be a problem on Saturday because something's going to go on and they're using it that way, that's different. Get them getting
I
it.
do. I totally.
Because I mean, staff will talk and if somebody's saying, well, I'm gonna be off Saturday. And, or you know that there's gonna be a search warrant and you're gonna need somebody, whatever. That's probably not a good example, but I mean, it's something that you kind of get a hint that there's something coming up. That's a little different than being totally unexpected.
So to the captain's point here is when somebody requests to take a day off, we require 7 days notice. Is that right?
Jill?
So if it's put in, if
Is
the
this
last,
the same though?
Yeah.
Dispatch was always different. I don't
It
know.
is.
so to Charlie, to captain's point here is when we do approve, if something comes up, you know, life happens and somebody will say, hey, I really need to take Thursday off. If we can make it work, and a lot of times we look, can we make it work without having to pay overtime to cover it? And we'll approve those, but there's a more of a lengthy approval process to let somebody off with less than 7 days notice. That's what we do for the patrol, and I'm not sure what the timeline is for corrections and dispatch, but I agree with the captain. If it's last minute, I would say absolutely not. Be like, no, if you end up having to work, you're getting straight time.
The word planned, Charlie used, it has to be a planned thing.
Well, yeah, and planned and approved,
Yes.
PTO approval, but then,
Yes.
an unexpected call-in event, however you want to phrase it, or the overtime. I can just see if it's not worded correctly, that can be twisted
Yeah.
into something else.
So what my thoughts were is, and Cassie's here to talk about, you know, how the committees work. You know,
But before we make a recommendation, I'm curious how, we don't want to do something that's going to contradict what Vernon's manager to either.
So I'll come up to just kind of explain the discussion at General Government Committee the other day. As Roy said, they made the change to shift for the correctional officers. But the discussion centered around basically the federal law, the 40 hours, counting, you know, actual hours worked. And what they saw as what would be a benefit on top of a benefit, which is if you have, you know, say you have that PTO day on Monday and then you're working on Saturday, you're essentially getting your overtime, or your PTO day is overtime. So we talked about the choice of either giving them the PTO back or paying it out at straight time, and they were comfortable with that. There was some question, like we said, about the per pay period versus shift, so we made that. But it was pretty, I mean, they voted 5-0 for this policy here. There were questions about implications for singling out a department for a countywide policy, and that, you know, implementation of that could be rough. We could be setting ourselves up for some challenges there. You know, this has been implemented at Vernon Manor. We haven't had any issues with it the way it is. Tricia could speak to, she spoke at General Government about previous employers and how this law is implemented, that every employer she's ever worked for has been 40 hours actually worked. And that was Alice Ann's, those were her comments at General Government Committee as well.
May comment here and tell me if I'm out of place, but at Vernon Manor, they had these traveling nurses there when they couldn't make it. And that was double the price, or maybe even more. I don't know. My numbers aren't right in my head.
We've incredibly cut back on
Yeah, I know they have.
Yeah.
But that's the way they were making it here through the COVID period. And I don't mean to run anybody down here, but that's what they did. And that wasn't really right or managed right. Let's put it that way. I don't think it was. But I just point that out. So time and a half would be not much compared to what that was for those people.
I would like to know how many how many departments work overtime. Does zoning work much overtime? Human services, they work overtime. Or maybe they have on-call pay. I'm not sure how they're structured.
The issue is more than just the sheriff's office that this is going to affect.
Well, something that everybody says, Roy, you guys are different. No matter how fair you want to be, you are 24/7 public safety. I have to provide that service to the community. So we are different. No matter how fair we want to be, we're different.
Maybe it would be in our best interest to review some other counties, just to see how they're.
Good idea, Will. Great idea.
I don't know.
That's a great idea.
I don't know where we're going. I don't want to.
I guess I don't see how they can say that the Monday PTO is overtime, because it's not. It's straight time.
And he might only work 4 hours on Saturday. And he get time and a half. 2, it isn't that it's 8 hours. It could be.
But the other, if you get a department that's working 4 days, you technically could get into that same thing where now something came up and they're working Friday, or you took off Monday, and now you're getting into that same scenario, just different. That's why I'm wondering how it affects the other departments, because the countywide policy has to, as much as it doesn't fit the shoes for everybody correctly, it's still a countywide policy.
And it does go against somewhat accurate timekeeping, because you're having to fudge Monday at the end of the pay period, where you already had it down, which we've done here for the 31 years I've been here, is that PTO did count as hours worked. So as far as determining overtime.
Devil's advocate now, what if it's a Sunday shift? If you call them in, they haven't worked Monday through Friday, what are you gonna do there? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the way we've done it is is that a different pay period or the same different pay period? It would be.
Well, I'm just thinking of the wording of the policy.
Well, he'd probably get time and a half on Sunday, Charlie, wouldn't he? And then work his 5.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, and then he'd have the same thing.
That's what we do. We pay also.
Well, I knew that's what they did, but I'm just saying to make sure we understand everything.
Yeah.
It works the other way too.
Yeah.
Before, you can argue it where they've already had their shift in, now they're working Saturday, but now you're working Sunday, haven't worked the rest of your week. So is that going to be handled different? I just wanted clarification.
If they were to work their regular Monday through Friday and they worked that Sunday before, and we're not talking about any PTO or anything like that, yes, it would be overtime.
But the PTO
Because it's over 40 hours.
The PTO is what we're debating here.
If you give them that PTO day, but that's just another day we've got to schedule out 7 days ahead of time. And but I was hoping to get some numbers from Badger Sheriffs, and I think I don't want to go and upset the county board on the 21st or upset the other committee. I want to go through the proper channel. And if it's this committee making a recommendation to the other committee or the full board, I'm looking for your guidance and support on that, because I want to do it right. And I want them to truly understand the argument. And I have no problem with getting numbers on the rest of the state, which I could have before the 21st. But I don't want to, going in on the full county board floor like that, I don't want to blindside these other committees, because they've been great to work with. So I'm getting pulled both directions here. And I am looking for some committee assistance on how to navigate this.
What you have is Sheriff touched on that his 31 years here, that's the way it was, right? This affects about 30 people in the office here. And I don't think you're going to find one of them who's going to say that they are in favor of a policy change, no matter what it is, because it is not a benefit in their eyes.
Yeah.
The other thing that came up at General Government Committee were obvious budgetary concerns.
Just so it's totally redacted. I'll pass them over here.
the particular comment that was made was we take great strides towards getting our employees, where they need to be pay wise. And, there's obviously a cost to that and then an additional cost. So that was part of the conversation as well.
I'll hold back on that because we're trying to get people to truly understand how that works, trying to call somebody in on their day off. That takes a while to, time people call you back and, we don't expect them to sleep with their phone. So they need to call us back within a reasonable time period. And we would discipline someone for not doing that. But what's, reasonable if you're out on a family outing and you don't have cell service, we have to give them a reasonable amount of time to call us back. And we are working very hard to not order anyone in. In fact, I told the captain, I want to know when somebody has truly ordered in and said, you have no choice, you have to come in. I want to keep track of that and keep that number very low. As Sandy said, for morale.
There's a lot of things you can think about here. I'm a transport driver by trade. And I can remember when we needed transport drivers and you call them up on the day off and they've been out partying. So they've been using alcohol. And you got to tell them you can't drive.
Right.
If you're that way. And it could very well be in this situation too, where you wouldn't get that person you call for various reasons like that. Figuring on this day off.
Well, and the other monkey wrench is that some may want the time off or want their PTO day back. That's what muddies the water even more.
Yeah.
Because it's not one way or the other, and to write a policy. What, yeah.
I think you could build it in where you have a choice. I think you could, because the law allows for it.
But then you got to do that for the rest of the county. That's where the confusion part comes.
And I'm trying not to, but you know what, when we keep saying the rest of the county, how many other departments pay overtime? I think it's going to be your 24/7 departments that probably pay the majority of overtime. I don't see.
At some point they all do, don't they?
Depends on the situation or what that department is dealing with. But yeah, I mean,
it couldn't be.
mostly Vernon highway,
You
human
could-
services. I mean, it just depends.
You could have a flood and you're going to have land and water that
Yep.
way too.
Yep, so it really just
They
depends.
got to go out and check the dams.
Yeah.
I know what happens there, but that's,
But I'm going to think of that when it's changing policy.
yeah.
Can you ever have two committees meet together? Is that?
Oh, yeah, you could do that. Joint meeting.
Have a joint meeting to get everybody around, get everybody's heads wrapped around
So
this.
federal employment law doesn't prevent this.
I can answer that. I can. I called the Department of Workforce Development Equal Rights Division. I figured if anybody knew the answer, it would be them. And I talked to the Equal Rights Officer for the state, and she says, Roy, the county is correct. They don't have to pay overtime in that case because it is hours work. However, you would never be penalized for paying it. And I can get you the
Oh, I believe it.
wording. I don't like being told, well, you can't do this because it's federal law. There's more to that.
Okay, let's use the other side of this. So they win and Roy loses. And so Roy's got emergency problems and he's calling. And one guy is giving this excuse and one guy's giving that excuse and we're down to Roy. What are we going to do here? How are we going to get people involved to help the situation? I mean, what's the solution there?
Well, unfortunately,
If we don't pay.
policy dictates, you can't just say I'm not coming in. I mean, you can order somebody in, they just don't want to do that. And rightfully so. I mean, that's not a good.
We've all had to come in when it's been very inconvenient. I have Brandon all the time, Captain. We've all come in when we've but it's just been the most terrible timing and we do it for the team.
I realize it's part of the job, but you also shouldn't be taking advantage of it because it's part of the job.
And it's not gonna come up every pay period. It's not gonna come up. It's only in those cases where they had taken time off in that pay. So it's not an everyday occurrence. Or not every Saturday it's gonna apply to, and a lot of times it will not. It's, I would say, I don't know, maybe 25% of the time, that's just shooting from the hip numbers.
And in the scheme of things, we all like to be compensated fairly. And time off is, yeah.
There's a hand.
I don't-
Will, have you seen that or not? There's a hand up.
Oh, okay, I didn't see that. I'm just glad you,
don't know who's saying.
I can't read, I can't see it.
It doesn't.
I see it, well, I see it, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I can't.
Hi, this is Jenny Knudsen.
Hi.
Hi. I just kind of, I overheard Vernon Manor being brought up, and I just thought that I would kind of give some insight to that because at that time, when the policy did change, I was doing payroll for them. Okay. So the department heads received an email from General Gov or whatever the name of that committee was at that time. And we were instructed to remove any overtime for holiday or any hours unproductive hours. So for example, PTO, holiday pay, ELB, bereavement, anything that someone did not work, that was not considered a total of their total hours. It did take some time for Vernon Manor staff to adjust to that, and I did a lot of explaining. But once they did understand and the schedule did get reviewed as far as not over scheduling them with hours when they had holiday pay, or if they wanted to pick up a shift, then they understood what pay they were getting at. And I understand taking care of patients, whether it's residents or tenants at Vernon Acres, or even in the jail, or even in the community. I think that there's an argument that every department takes care of someone at some time, whether it's Veterans Office or whether it's Human Services. I have never worked for anywhere as well that gives anything for overtime if you have a holiday. I was shocked when I came to Vernon County. I worked in healthcare for 20 years and I'm like, you mean I get paid for a holiday and if I work over my 40, I get overtime? I've never heard of that. I am just supplying some input so you are aware of how it did occur at Vernon Manor and how you could take that as a reflect moving forward. I'm not saying either or, but I think if you are considering changing this for one department, it has to be in whole. You don't want social workers leaving that are taking care of families. You don't want veterans. You know, I mean, there's many departments in Vernon County that this is going to affect, not just the sheriff's department. Thank you for listening.
I agree with you, Jenny. I would like to see that countywide because I don't, as I said before, I don't think you're seeing it. Vernon Manor and the sheriff's office are going to probably have the majority of overtime being 24/7. Would you agree on that? Than other departments? And yes, our other departments serve this community equally. I agree with that.
Well, aged. I think we're going into a lot of muddy water. Really to change this, Charlie just said it before. You gotta be so careful. This planned holiday, or day off, whatever you call it. then how that affects that with that time and a half. You know, that's almost a thing that's got to be reviewed every time it happens. Make sure it's, you know, it's going right. Don't you think? Or somebody has to be really on their toes here. Payroll or somewhere.
Would the department heads be reviewing?
Yeah, well, the department heads would be right here. They would submit that. And yet I can see how it affects people. I guess I'm kind of torn between it too. You know, the thing is, when you can do something for this, such a time period, you get used to it, and it's 90% of everything is adjusting to change. And it's not easy to change always. So I guess, I don't know what our recommendation is here. As a committee.
Tell the feds to jump in the lake.
Or I did that already.
Well, the feds don't
I did jump in, that was a river.
Oh, that was river. Oh, well, that right. Okay, I'm sorry, I got that wrong.
It was fun. Once I got oxygen.
As your age, that might not be as much fun. I don't know where I'm going with this myself.
What would the harm be in getting some numbers throughout the state?
As we could. I guess I'd like to see what projected expense would be, say we got some average number of incidences above. I don't know how you gotta kind of.
But that's becoming wide.
Yeah.
I think that's what their committee was concerned with, is it could be a lot of money depending on
Well, that's kind of where I'm going at, deciding that.
how good each department head manages it too. That's the other side of it.
Well, management is, yeah.
So I, of course, flex my hours to make, I'm not an overtime employee, so I make everything work. And some of your, I think your department heads, most are salaried and they just have a job to do and they have to get that job done. And overtime probably does not apply to a lot of them. But it's very hard to calculate on how much it would cost depending on the
Yes.
very hard.
Yeah, you don't know what's coming up. It could be kinds of things.
And there are no notes on why the former HR director proposed the changes. We don't know what, if there was a problem. The minutes do not
So
say.
just to save money. I mean, that would be a good guess in their eyes.
I think I was chairman and I don't recall that
Chairman of
personnel at the time.
personnel in 22.
Oh, no, not in 22.
Yeah, it would have been. fall.
This was,
okay, then I wasn't there.
Government.
Yeah, okay, I thought it was previous. Yep. Okay, no. No,
As much as I agree with Roy, for the sheriff's office, I don't know how you incorporate it. I don't want to say that we might have Trump what general government just did, because it
yeah,
may be time to, maybe we could meet with them.
hammering out something together than individually. If there's something Okay.
And I think if you were to make a request to Alexand to meet together, I would think that you'd be able to work that out.
Because there's been no other issues with any other department within the county that has changed. But we don't know how many people have used it though either.
Like it's a very hard budgetary, like Will said, a very hard budgetary number to know. You know, it's very circumstantial. And really will depend on what's happening with the individual departments.
And the last thing I'll leave you at is, do we ever consider the true cost of replacing an employee? You know, somebody leaves. I'm not saying they would leave because of that, but what I look at here is there is one large cost to replace a correctional officer. They can work a year. Within that year, we have to send them to 5 weeks of school. That's pay that they're getting. And so I think that we should always look at, when you're balancing that, you know, what is the true cost to replace an employee? Our patrol officers, they're field training for about 4 months, 3 to 4 months, depending on their experience level. That's a lot of time that we're investing on the front end.
Well, you know, the old adage, change is good, is somewhat diminished here because experience in a good employee is, well, worth having at all costs. Just because he knows what's going on, takes the full responsibility of whatever his position may be. And you want them feeling, you know, that they are working and being compensated and accomplishing their role too. And they're doing. You know, if I was coming in, I suppose I got to throw myself into this. If I was coming in, I guess I'd want to be on that day off. And I have worked, you know, I'm a self-employed person. Well, I work 24/7. I demonstrated that was my dream. But, you know, when you work for somebody, your dream is work that long, you get this kind of time. And that's your mental health time. And I was a transport driver by trade, which I did for 12 years. And I really look forward to my time off. And so I do emphasize with that. And I did get pulled runs on time off where I got paid extra. I don't know how they paid me, but they did. And
so Juneau County, what they do, because if this doesn't get changed, you know, are we going to look at maybe an on-call pay? Juneau County, call-in pay. A minimum of 2 hours call-in pay for hours that are not connected to the regular work hours shall be paid at a rate of time and 1/2. When there is a vacant shift, the supervisor shall be notified first. The supervisor will order a call out for the vacant shift to be offered by seniority and any other factor deemed relevant to the supervisor. If there are no volunteers, the supervisor will then require an employee to come in at the supervisor's discretion while making an effort to spread out who is called in. So, you know, they don't have a contract, but, you know, that's other ways of maybe covering some of this is by having an on-call pay, which I'd rather.
So that is something that came up in general government and that Alison said she's willing to explore for their committee.
I
something specific like it, and I think that's incentive based. I think it makes sense. It makes more sense for your department than looking at changing what we do countywide. And you know, like you said, you're also showing that they're appreciated because there is an incentive. There is a bump for them there.
I think it'd cost you more to do that than to pay the overtime on the Saturday.
I don't think so.
How much would you pay them?
County, but like, if you do this, you're looking at countywide, there are huge cost implications there. If you go to this call-in pay, we could do that specifically for your department, and that is not going to cost as much as implementing a full county policy. In my
I feel
opinion.
about that, Cindy.
I think that sounds like a good compromise. So the sheriff is still gonna be covered, but you don't have to worry about.
You're talking about a call-in pay, Charlie.
Oh,
And it's something just to get base where we are here. General government, actually, Cassie just said was going to be looking.
Allison
That's
said that's
requested.
something that she would be willing to explore.
But we could explore that together. You know, we were talking about this meeting.
That would take a lot of coordination because we are 24/7, 366 this year. Who's on call for the weekend? You know, how do we determine that? I think if you looked at the numbers, I think it would, because you keep saying countywide, well, how many other departments? But what I'd like to do is just ask, how much time and a half do we pay in services? And they're gonna have some on the weekends because they're on call a lot. But I'll bet you it's gonna be Vernon Manor. It's probably gonna be Vernon Manor, Sheriff, Highway, Human Services. Those are gonna be probably your 4 big overtime.
The steadier one.
Yeah.
but Vernon Manor is now adapted to the policy and is relatively okay with it. That's only why that's going to be the issue.
Well, I don't know where to move other than what he just brought this up and that was SOC. Did you say this?
That was Juno.
Or Juno, I'm sorry.
That was one example I had, but, maybe this joint meeting isn't such a bad idea, Will, where both committees can meet at the same time, in the same place.
It was called in if you're called in an hour before your shift, or it was called in just you're on your day off, or it was called, I mean,
There's a lot
that's
of,
a whole different, there's a lot of spaces for that too.
Yeah, I don't know.
what we do in the union realm is they get 2 hours. So whether they get called in to testify for 15 minutes at a hearing, they get paid 2 hours. That's how on-call works for the union. And that's all in union contract language. They get a 2-hour minimum.
Well,
If they work 8 hours, that wouldn't do the dispatcher any good or the correctional any good unless it was above and beyond for being on call. But I need my whole agency on call all the time, pretty much, because things happen that I can't control.
does somebody get their hand up?
Tricia?
Okay, Tricia, you could get your hand up.
Hi. Just wanted to speak on behalf of the specific policy. It would be a department-specific policy that would not be you wouldn't be paying on call all the time because you have people scheduled in those shifts. The only time that someone would be paid would be the compensation that is decided upon and approved. And then if someone was called in on that emergency case that is being brought up, that there's always these emergencies that come up that people are needing to be called in and dispatch and correctional, it would be a department-specific payroll policy for that specific department that they would have a call back pay for when they're called in for those scenarios. So there wouldn't be people being paid like a call pay and on-call pay to be ready for their phone to ring because you have people already in those departments working 24/7.
It would be an incentive.
Correct.
Well,
Based on the fact that they are a 24/7 facility and there is a potential for emergency cases to arise. And that would not apply to all of our departments. Or if it did, then we would have to write a department-specific policy for them as well. I think of the highway department, they have emergencies, the weather, or different things come up. Major accidents where someone perhaps needs to be on scene. But countywide, it wouldn't be necessary for it to be a countywide policy necessarily. Does that make sense?
And I think you gotta be careful about using the word emergency, because if you have, say when COVID hit, you had multiple people out, you may
Correct.
need the same situation, and it's really not an emergency, it's a staff billing. So it's a little broader than just saying emergency.
Right. I was just referencing the verbiage that's been used in the meeting today, that there's emergency staff and emergency reasons that staff have been called into correctional and to dispatch, and that's what they want to be compensated.
I think we're down to, if you want to meet general government, discuss this, or, it isn't something we're gonna just do here.
Or I get up on the stump on the 21st and give it my all and try to get 10 votes on the board floor.
That's what I mean. I don't know if that's what we should do or we should explore it further.
I would be the employee that would say, just give me my PTO day back. I'd rather have the time off, but I can't speak for myself anymore. I got 51 other people to speak for, and they want the overtime.
And give me direction.
I feel like a department-specific policy in this case makes sense. Something incentive-based where we're still, rewarding them for picking up that shift, but we're not getting into the realm of something that's going to apply to all of our employees. And that's something that we could, bring back to this committee and discuss. I think it's a good middle ground too. And it's manageable from a budgetary standpoint as well.
Okay, so do you want to do some exploration, bring this back again next month, and then we come with the recommendation?
I'm ready to go to the county board floor on the 21st and give it a shot, and I don't want to keep kicking this can down the road.
Well, we can let you still be on the county board floor, but you might want to talk about this and see what they think. I don't know. And then we can, I suppose if everybody's interested, we can work on a policy then. Is that, we're kind of putting a shoe ahead of us here, or foot ahead of us.
I think Roy's looking for kind of a motion of support, much like Brandon did. Am I correct?
Well, we aren't going to make it a motion today. I don't think we should do that, do we?
Well,
We want him to go to the floor and get some input and see if that's what everybody wants. I think the motion, if there's a motion, it should come to the county board floor. That, hey, we can, don't you think, or am I thinking wrong?
well, our agenda says that make
They're all-
recommendations for possible changes.
Yeah.
So that,
Yeah, I like the incentive part better. I think countywide policy and disaster,
That's hard to implement. That's
where if we could do an incentive within the sheriff's office, to me, that would make more sense.
What would a model look like?
Well, that's,
Well, that I don't know, but you could come on the board floor and say, in my 31 years, this is what we did. And this isn't quite as appropriate or whatever wordage you use anymore. And we're thinking about going to this call-in. Right?
I think if we want to call in, that should be a general government. I think that should be a general government item, and,
Well, you're on the county board floor, don't know, Roy. So now it has to revert back to general government, maybe from there. I
well,
don't
that's
know.
where it's gonna get sent.
if I walked into the county board floor, I would have maybe A, B, and C options and say, I'm requesting a friendly amendment.
Okay.
Because this has got to get approved anyways on the 21st. It's already on the
The
board
agenda.
floor. Yep, it's already on the agenda. So this is why I'm thinking this is our chance to get it fixed. Well, it's on the full county board floor.
But to be honest, for the sheriff's office, I agree. But when you've got other departments that have already following it and they have accepted it, quote unquote, I'd have an issue voting yes right now, to be honest. I'm not saying what you want is wrong. I just think the way we're going about it to affect the whole county is being too specific to the sheriff's office and not looking at the operations of all the other departments, which a countywide policy has to do. I'm just being honest.
Oh, yeah.
I don't totally, that's where I think the incentive part that's specific to the sheriff's office would be a better avenue to accomplish the same thing without causing as many trouble with others.
So how is that incorporated into?
Well, that's.
But you're talking multiple days of being on call. It isn't just a weekend. It's a weeknight. You know, basically anybody that's off is on call.
Well, I'm not saying
looking at,
call.
but we're looking at an something incentive based.
I'm
not
saying,
like
let's go all the way back to where you were at. We just say that if you get called in that situation, you get 100.
If you get called in.
You get 150% of your pay, or however you want to phrase it. I don't like the word call in. I think that's a whole nother total disaster because it's too vague and each department interprets that differently based on how they work. I'm just saying, take it to what you wanted, which was just paying overtime for that as equivalent. Now we just got to figure out how to word it to do that.
Unscheduled hours.
And then you're creating a new thing, which could be covered by just reverting back to the old policy.
Well,
But it wouldn't though,
But it's
because
not
if we
that
reverted back to the way it was before, that's countywide.
that's what I'm saying is, I think it's easier to address something specific to the sheriff's office than trying to, because now you're going to have, or could have, because I can't speak for them, and another department who was already adjusted to this and did all the legwork to make it fit. Well, now you're saying, well, now we're going to go back again. It's not that simple. My thought. Okay, Chair, it's up to you.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. Okay, you really kicked it over here.
Can you at least appreciate my argument here?
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I just don't agree countywide.
Yeah. Not sure how that does come out countywide or not, but it's a reward for an emergency situation. Them people.
Or how does a department make their policy?
And we're talking full-time people only, correct?
So,
Okay.
assuming this resolution will go to county board, assuming it's passed the way it is, we can come back to this committee creating, and we can get input from general government if we want, which I would recommend, on creating a specific policy for your department for an incentive pay for those, for when you have to cover those shifts. And I think you're going to have a lot more consensus for that than you would to alter the whole county policy.
So you're saying we're going to approve this policy come the 21st, and then next time this will be on the agenda and we can sit here and tweak it with this incentive pay for our
Absolutely.
department,
Yes.
and then bring it April back to the county board.
I don't know how department specific, and maybe Tricia can talk about that, how department specific policies have gone in the past, if they've gone to full board then, or is it approved at committee?
Apparently they haven't because personnel passed this. And
Yeah.
They just had
Well,
to
that
be
one
committee
should-
because Vernon Manor's got some things.
Yeah. My assumption was we would need to take it to full board. Is that correct, Tricia?
Yes, I would say that we should take it to full board after, but it would be something that we would be involved in. It isn't just the department that gets to come up with this policy. I would say that HR and administration and then the committee should be involved as well.
Well, I think what I'm gonna at least do then is I'm gonna go to the county board on the 21st and say, I am asking that nobody introduce a motion to pass policy 503, and we're gonna go back and try to hammer out some issues in committee.
But this wouldn't affect policy 503. 503 is a Vernon County policy. That's a county-wide policy. The one we're looking at right now today is a county-wide policy. What we need to implement is a sheriff's department payroll policy.
I think that's what Cassie was just saying, is that we
Yes.
have this.
And
And
that-
then we address.
That has to go before county board, don't it, Tricia?
I would think that it should,
Yeah. That'd be a resolution.
because it's still a county policy, even though it's department specific. And the board of supervisors, you set the policies.
Then you have dueling policies that are conflicting.
That's okay. We have several conflicting policies. That's why we have specific department policies. When I asked the sheriff's department why they pay holiday payout the way they pay it, because it's conflicting with county policy, I then asked you to create a sheriff's department policy. This is the same situation. The sheriff's department is paid holiday pay different than anyone else in the county. But we allow that, just like we would allow this.
Then I should be able to just make a policy here then.
No, that is what I am saying is that it shouldn't be that you as a department head can make any policy that you want. It would need to go through the proper channels.
Okay.
We're trying to keep a county consistency here as well. But there are certain situations, so this is why I'm in support of you coming up with a specific department policy, but we need to have something in writing if that's the case, and everyone has to be on board with it. Because we can't have departments going off, completely off kilt and making whatever policies they want to create. And there has to be a rhyme and a reason why they're approved and created.
So has Vernon Manor done that with their several variances that we've seen?
I have found that they have created things. I don't know if that, I'm assuming they were not taken to board level. I can tell you that. They have incentive policies. I do not know if they were taken to board level or not.
Here's a good.
They don't have a callback policy or anything, but I do know that they have certain shift differentials, weekend incentives, those types of scenarios that they can use in situations based on their department and their needs and their staffing for the state requirements.
So Tricia, here's another good one for you. 2.2 talks about a correctional officer position in the county policy, and that's still in black. That's not redlined out. So I think this is a sloppy policy to get approved on the board floor on the 21st, the way it is.
That one has been in there since the policy was created. That isn't new. And that's when I brought up a general government that is still in place. So if you have your correctional officers working 14 hours instead of their 12-hour Pittman schedule, they are currently getting paid overtime for those 2 additional hours.
And I don't think that's fair to the 911 communications center.
I'm not sure why they were put separately on a countywide policy, personally. I'm not sure why correctional officers were called out at that time during the writing of this policy, but I can't speak to when that was created and why it was placed in it that way. I personally would not want a specific department in a policy like that. I would not include it in a countywide policy.
So it still needs work, and that's why I think maybe on the 21st, I might just ask them, because if nobody makes a motion to approve it, it's going to die on the board floor for that time, and I can talk about maybe getting a joint meeting between public safety and general
But I guess
government.
my question is, why does it have to go to the board floor? Why does it have to be brought up at the board level when this can be taken care of amongst committee members?
Because
And then taken to board once it's ready to be approved by board? Isn't it just going to be a waste of everyone's time on the board floor?
it's already on the agenda for the 21st, Tricia.
Oh, it can be pulled.
I didn't realize that the agenda had already been posted for the 21st.
They're all on the county board floor for the 21st, right? Yes.
Yeah, it'll be on the agenda. It'll be a resolution coming
Well,
on the agenda.
this is going to start off up there, Lauren calling for a motion and a second, and he's going to get it right away. Because everybody's not going to understand what's going on here.
Better spend
Well,
my
it
4
ain't, it is not gonna die due to lack of a second.
Well,
I'm
I'm
pointing
gonna,
that out.
I better spend my 4 minutes wisely then.
Yeah, because it'll be on the floor if it's on the agenda. Guarantee you. Not because we maybe like it, but just for that reason.
That's why it's on the board floor, Tricia, is because all these county policies that are marked as a draft are submitted for approval for the full board on the 21st. That's why I would bring it up there, Tricia, only because they're already on the agenda. And if I feel there's a sloppy policy on there, then why would you approve a sloppy policy on the 21st?
Okay, I wasn't aware that it was already, that there were policies on the agenda.
No, just this policy, just this
Okay.
one.
Okay,
That's-
so there isn't other policies that I'm not aware of.
This one that they voted on at general government.
Okay,
That's
okay.
Chair of the General Government Committee. I can read his response.
The agenda hasn't been posted yet.
There is nothing.
Official anyway.
All right, I'll pull up the chair's response.
Talking chair of general government.
Correct. We will be bringing them to the board floor in March.
So the other policies that weren't approved at the time were all related to PTO. So we originally thought we were going to have multiple policies from that time period that weren't approved by the board. But this is the only one, when we did research from 2020 to present, that did not go to full board. So we were originally thinking we would have a batch of policies, but the rest of them were related to PTO, and the PTO policy was just approved at county board last month. So this is the only policy, and if you look at my general government agenda from last week, this was the only policy from our policy manual that was considered by general government.
So those policies that are marked draft are no longer going to be marked draft. When you go on the L drive to look at the full.
We're talking about our full policy manual. At no
Yes.
point were we considering adopting our full policy manual this month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just this one that was made in
Just this one.
22.
Yep, because we knew this one had gone to general government, but had not gone.
503 is one that it says correctional officer already.
Yep, I'll send
So
you.
Tricia, does that need to be looked at if you're specifying one? And
Only if you are wanting to change it.
well, you said before that you wouldn't have a policy that specifies one group over another. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, well, you just asked like why it was that way, and I said I don't know because that's just the way it has been done. It doesn't mean that I would recommend that that's the way I would do it.
We brought that up at general government as far as the like singling out a department.
Yeah.
This,
It isn't typical to single out a department in a countywide policy. That is where like a department specific policy would come into place. But that is the policy that's been in place. I mean, that I don't know when that was written or why it was put in that way, but I'm assuming it was due to correctional officers wanting to get the overtime.
You know, we've spent a lot of time here already,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if we know just where we're going yet. Do we need it? I don't know what we need here. Do we need, maybe this policy is going to get passed on the board floor, but we need to amend it at a later date then.
I don't know if we need to worry about that. I think we're focusing on this policy, but if we're going to do a department specific thing to address Roy's
Yeah.
concerns, one doesn't necessarily go with the other.
Another, it could just be another.
Right,
Department.
totally separate department policy that we, so what it's gonna amount to is if Roy can check with some other agencies to see how they're doing it, then we might have some guidance on a good way to word it to make it fit what we need. And then not stress about the existing policy relevant.
Yeah, we're trying to beat two horses here at once, maybe.
I don't think in good conscience I could go to the board and say, approve this 503, we'll change it later when it's already got.
We're not changing the policy though.
Charlie, my point.
We're not changing that policy. We're coming up with a totally different, department-specific one to address what you're looking for. The county policy has nothing to do with that.
It does, because it already says correctional officer in it, not dispatcher. So that's muddying the water. What I'd like to just go in there on the 21st and say, I'm asking you not to approve this policy the way it is. I've been in contact with my chair, my home committee to perhaps meet with the general government committee as a joint to try to work something out. Here's the reasons I don't agree with it. And because I don't think the board should pass that the way it's written on the 21st, and that's up to them whether they do or not. But they might buy the argument, well, hey, maybe that should go back to committee.
Is 503 sent as an email?
Yes, I just sent it to you.
Oh, okay.
So the red is what got changed in September of 22, and the green is what just got changed at general government. It's already talking about correctional officers in there, so it's already, it goes against what Tricia is saying. Tricia would rather that not be in a county policy, which it already is.
And yet if you take out correctional officers who have been getting 2 extra hours of overtime.
They are not right now. There's nothing. No, it just says they get overtime.
Okay.
Over.
So removing that would not adversely affect them.
Well, I still think it's fair to have correctional in the county policy when dispatchers are not. I'd rather see them all come out or all go in, but not one or the other. That really creates some equity issues.
So if we go to this 2-hour pay or whatever, would that be a addendum to this 503? So for the sheriff's department instead of being privately department policy, or you want to include it? We got it both ways here.
I would recommend we establish it as a separate. Rather than putting.
Well, I think it would be much simpler that way, separate from this. But if this is part of it, the wordage with those correctional officers is included. Maybe that needs to be worded different so we get it out of there and it's not. Maybe it ain't bothering us at all. I don't know.
Right, did the dispatchers work the Pittman schedule?
Yes. Yep. The only thing that's different with dispatch is they're not considered an exempted employee where the jail is. So that means we can't work them the full 48 hours in that because one of their shifts would put them in overtime. That's why they don't work kind of full-time hours, because in the jail, they can work the Pittman and they work the 84 hours every pay period, and we do not pay overtime for those 4 hours. We cannot do that in dispatch. I'd like to see that federal law change and make them exempted.
Possibly that's why they were put into this or called out in this policy, because of the Pittman schedule. That's when Tricia and I talked about this a while back, that was our assumption as to why they were put in there. Rather than because they do work that 84 hours and not 80. And when you have a policy that's referencing overtime and you have a variance there.
I have no idea when that was. There's no, at the bottom, you get a date, and there's no date at the bottom, and I don't know how long it's been that way. But I can tell you, I've been here for 31 years, and we've been doing it the way that I described for at least 31 years, probably a lot longer than that. So this is sudden to us.
But they haven't been on the Pittman schedule for 30 years.
No, they have not. But overtime still, I mean, the same rules would apply to them whether they're on Pittman or not, I think, Tricia.
It's just that they're not, they wouldn't be scheduled. We're getting way off here. They wouldn't be scheduled for 84 hours if they weren't working a Pittman schedule. They would be scheduled 5 8-hour shifts, which would put them to 40.
Right, we don't, the dispatchers, anything they do over 40 is overtime. In the jail, it would have to go over that, you know, that, because they're exempted. We can work them for 48 hours, or excuse me, 84 hours in the pay period. Where dispatch, we can only work them 80 in that pay period because it goes by week. So we can't have, because in one week of your rotation, you have 4 12-hour shifts, putting it at 48 hours, you'd have to pay dispatchers 8 hours of overtime. That's why we had to accommodate the schedule to work for them because they are not exempted.
Right.
I got good people. Great people.
Yeah. Thank you. Quite a busy.
Well, I don't think I'm going to offend anyone going on the county board floor and spending my 4 minutes to just say, I'd really like you to put off this vote today, and hopefully we can get together with public safety and general government and try to come in and, you know, come up with a different policy. And I just don't think it should be passed the way it is. I don't think I could just let that pass by in good conscience.
Yes, you can do that.
Well, that gives us our time to get our figures together.
Just like Alice had before that.
Yeah.
She knows what's going
Yeah, I told her in full transparency, I said, Alice Ann, I'm going to continue to pursue this with all due respect, and she knows that. I didn't talk to her about what, you know, speaking on the board floor, I didn't talk about that, but I will update her on that.
Well, I guess there's more, we'll see how lucky Roy is. There's probably more to come. I don't know what else to say. And then you're gonna have to, if we don't do anything with it, or we table it, or table it to the next meeting, then you would come with possible more changes. Or we're gonna.
I really appreciate your time and understanding this. This is not something I'm making up. It really isn't. I've lost a few battles along the way, and this is just one I have to dig my heels in and fight for my people. I got to fight for my team because they perform at exceptional levels, and they do it sometimes when it is their kid's birthday party. They do it when their vacation got cut short. We try not to ever force them into that position. But like a call, we had a 30-hour call. It took people. It took boots on the ground to make that happen. And I had to call people and say, I need you to go to the hospital and relieve Officer so-and-so because they've been there for 16 hours. I'm asking a lot of these people. And you know, if it comes to an incentive, I'm okay with that, but we need to compensate these people for the sacrifice.
Side for a little bit because I still have to.
Yeah, that's fine.
Tricia, you're not muted.
Sorry. Thank.
Oh, got it.
Any more in the maps here? So I don't know, I guess we're gonna let the sleeping dog lie? Is that what we're deciding, committee? And let Ryan do his thing and see what happens on the board floor? Charlie, you gonna nod your head too? No. Don't, Charlie don't know.
I would like to see if we could move toward a joint meeting with public safety and general government. This is an issue where we both have to be on the same page.
I don't agree. Well, why, when we can do a separate policy for the sheriff's office to address it?
Well, they're the ones that are gonna have to come up with that policy, but I guess
We will for that if it's a
we will.
department one.
Well, let's do it right now then.
We're not gonna do it right now.
I know.
We should have had that for today,
Yeah.
Well,
but we were thinking that way.
Part of the struggle is trying to make it a county policy because that affects everybody else,
Yeah.
which isn't gonna fly, in my opinion. Where if we can focus on, let's create something that works for the sheriff's office, that's where we should be spending our time, instead of fighting a battle that doesn't need to be fought.
So Charlie, what I'm asking for though is your support by this committee contacting the general government committee and saying, we would like to see this. That's the support I'm asking.
Why do we care about 503 if we're gonna create a department-specific policy related to that?
But it already has correctional officer in there.
You're lumping things. You're lumping things.
Yeah, that's a separate, maybe a separate thing
I
too.
mean, if we want to focus on, you don't want them in there, or you want to say employees and the correctional officer and dispatch, or 911, that's a totally different thing than what we're talking about as far as you're just trying to make one big ball of everything, and I think we're not going to get anywhere that way. Where if you're, so just the wording in 2.2, what fixes that for your concerns? Is it adding 911 dispatch, or is it?
It creates inequity between corrections and the 911 to see that in a county
You're not
policy.
answering my question.
Okay,
How do you change the wording on that to fit what you want?
delete the whole 2.2. To do it the way Tricia would like to see it, I'll bet you just delete the whole 2.2. If we're gonna have our own policy, then why should we have, you got a county policy talking about correctional officers, and then you got a sheriff's office policy talking about correctional officers and dispatchers. I would say you strike the whole, if you're gonna do it that way, you strike the whole 2.2. And we can't do that without a recommendation, because general government already.
Right, but this is the first that's been brought up. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Okay.
It's You're talking big umbrella. I'm saying, what is it we can do to fix it?
Okay.
If that's all it is. Tricia, your thoughts?
I don't see her up there either.
I'm sorry, Tricia had to go into another meeting she had scheduled. So she had to leave. I apologize.
Well, I mean, doesn't that make more sense if we can just scratch that off? With the understanding that we're going to be looking at a department-specific policy, and then we're on track to where we're going to go, and we're not.
Well, that could be pointed out when we go at this, yeah.
So then we would make a friendly amendment that we want that deleted. Is that?
Well, unless Tricia agrees, and it can be struck before, because it hasn't been
I
presented.
can't strike anything
Oh,
from
that's from their
what's,
committee.
that is from their committee.
I'd like to see a resolution passed today to strike that. And we did, it's on our agenda, that we can do it today.
We can't do a resolution because that's not on our agenda.
Yeah, it's on, I made sure that it
Well-
was worded that way so we could do that today.
Everything we got, it can be acted on.
Yeah.
You use a resolution, or we just do it?
You could, it would probably be cleaner to do it at the meeting, to be honest. Otherwise, we have two conflicting resolutions.
You change.
Yeah, and they'd be listed as separate agenda items. It would make more sense to just stick with the agenda item that's currently on our board agenda, and then you could introduce it at that time. But you'll want it in writing.
So basically, we could just say that based on issues within the sheriff's office, we're requesting that 2.2 just be deleted, and a departmental policy will be forthcoming. Tell me to that.
Well, that would really be simple. We won't even get into all this nitty gritty stuff that we haven't quite.
Well, that's what I was trying to get at. is
Yeah.
We, feelings get involved and functionality goes away.
Okay, committee, is that a kind of an agreement here? We don't see it.
It seems reasonable, does it not?
Sound good to you, Frank?
Yeah, Frank, we ain't heard from you. You sleeping?
Oh, no, he.
Oh, no wonder we don't hear from you, Frank. Keep you in the corner.
I don't know if you can unmute him. I think he has to unmute himself.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
We need to hear from Frank, because we need to hear from Frank.
You have suggestions on how?
Call his house and tell him.
He is trying to talk if you unmute him.
Can't. He muted himself on that answer.
Happens. Correctional officer.
Frank, you are muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Can you go to people list on tape?
There's a microphone button that has a slash through it. Just click that
That's a chance you take.
on the top right.
You know,
That's what I'm saying is that we praise it.
It'll say Mike, MIC.
Part of the specific policy.
Okay,
As long as it doesn't cause families issues with the time being.
are you willing to make that friendly amendment?
That's fine with
then?
me, because I'm basically gonna be running that department until we have a replacement, and in that time frame, we can work on this policy.
Because we want to make sure they.
Yeah,
get their
no,
own.
I get it, yeah.
We'll let you mute him.
So, Charlie, you're gonna make that friendly amendment?
Okay, so all you want me to do is say that
We'd like to get rid of 2.2.
two issues within the sheriff's office requesting to eliminate 2.2 with the understanding that there will be a department-specific policy forthcoming.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
You're just gonna blame me.
I'm just passing back on you. What do you think?
I'm happy.
Okay.
Okay,
Can we-
good.
I want that on the record.
That's only for the moment. Okay. Can we leave this point?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you, committee. That was well done. Item 12.
Quit laughing, Brandon.
Yeah, quit laughing. Discussion of medical compensation for employee, possible closed session. Should I read all this?
I think we can do it without going into closed.
Well, okay, so I don't have to read then all this?
If you, I think.
You don't have to read it if we're not gonna go into closed session. No.
Yeah. Okay, Brian,
So
lead on.
Eric has given me permission to share his story publicly. So that's why I don't feel we need to go into closed session, but I want to thank this committee and I want to thank Captain Jacobson for, we were tasked with trying to get this worked out. I want to thank Tricia. I want to thank the finance department. We sharpened our pencils and got WRS everything that they needed. Captain was instrumental. Charlie was instrumental in holding them to it. Do you have everything? What form number do you want? He was very specific. And finally, they responded and said, we have everything we need. I talked to Eric, and the first of the month, he did receive his first duty disability annuity payment, and it included his back pay to November 3rd when he officially retired. The rest of it, Charlie and I are working on some insurance stuff, but right now Eric is very happy that he's now getting an income.
Okay,
And I think that was, I think that's what the committee had expected for an update, so.
Very good.
Yeah, but Charlie, thank you. You come over and worked with Tricia, you worked with finance, you worked with me, you worked with Eric, and we got it done. So thank you.
thank you. Right. Glad you guys are, it's a team effort.
Yeah, and Tricia worked very hard on this as well. Tricia, I think she went to another meeting, but Jenny, please let Tricia know how much we appreciated all the phone calls she took, and we had some lawyer fighting and more lawyer fighting and more lawyer fighting and more lawyer fighting, but we got it worked out. So thank you, Tricia, as well.
Very good. Okay, we will continue on with item 13, opioid epidemic abatement funds. This is for discussion if there's any.
I think we have Cassie give us a little update on the two grant awards.
Yeah, so the committee awarded its first grants, so $25,000 to the Amara Rose Foundation. And that will be for billboards for a year across the county. And then $25,000 to the health department to purchase medication lock boxes. And so they were going to order a few different ones, see what's going to work the best, and then they'll do their bulk order. And those will be distributed not only to the public, but also at the healthcare facilities across the county. Yeah, and the next grant application, I believe, closes in May, but I don't know off the top of my head. Is that right? Thank you. So, and we expect to get more applications this go around.
And the sheriff's office will apply for a grant for education in the schools. But we wanted to see this committee get off to a good start and before we reached out, and we want to do a lot of homework because we want that money to be spent because there's only so much of that money to go around. We want it spent very, very wisely. So, but we will pursue that down the road here.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. Item 14, any other items for consideration for the next meeting? I wrote down storage needs, Brandon, for you.
Nope.
Same thing there. And then it'll be this discussion on department policy here for Collins. I don't know anything else. Should anybody have something else?
We're going to be having some life-saving awards. And I've kind of toyed whether, I think we should do it at a full county board meeting. We had a really awesome life-saving, and, I think that's deserving of a full, a presentation at full board. And I would be looking to get that on the April agenda. And if you want a quick rundown on it now, I can give it to you, or we can wait. But it was pretty awesome.
We can have that at our April meeting.
Okay.
Work county.
Just because it's not on the agenda.
Yeah.
Go there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, pictures of Roy jumping in.
All right, I'll put that in there. There you go.
I think it was Channel 13 that got most of it.
Okay. Item 15 is to confirm our next meeting date, which is April 8th, 9:30 here. Adjournment's in order. Second by Sandy. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Say bye to Frank.
Frank wants